Hi, and welcome back to the next edition of the Check-In Podcast, where we're talking about leading well-being at work and at school. We're talking with community builders and leaders. Today's guest is Mr. Chris McGrath. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Happy to be here. Thanks for creating some space for me, Nelson.
Chris, maybe tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name's Chris McGrath. I use he, him, his pronouns. I work in post-secondary education. I've been working in colleges and universities across Canada for almost 30 years, and always working to support students in their own experiences and making sure that they have the resources they need to be academically, personally, and professionally successful. I'm the youngest of three kids of immigrant parents. I have family living all over the world. I've recently just moved to Niagara region in the past 2 years after about 20 plus years in downtown Toronto. As I said, my day work, I work at a local college. I also am a designated minister. I'm a wedding officiant, so I have some spiritual outreach practice that I do. And my universe now centers around a rescue dog named Seamus, who came into my life in December, who pretty much is my reason for being, doesn't leave much room for anybody else. I experience the world through multiple lenses. I'm a member of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And I also share with people that I see the world through intersecting perspectives of disability that are both sort of my physical health and also my mental health. And happy to be part of a conversation about well-being, about mental health at work for me, but I also have the, I think, unique privilege to also be working in a school setting, and I've never left school from the time I was 4. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So, Chris, first question right out of the chute is what does well-being at work or at school mean to you personally?
For me, well-being is very much defined by whether or not I'm excited to get up in the morning and go do what I'm about to do. And it's having that feeling or that sense inside myself that I have purpose, I'm going to have some impact, I'm going to be learning, and I'm going to be engaged in something that's going to stimulate my head and my heart. Those for me are really critical conditions for being well in my work. I could think about and probably describe what that looks like functionally, but for me, it's all about being in touch with the sort of identity and the sort of sensation I have about the type of person I want to be when I'm in the workplace, and making sure that it is congruent and as fully aligned as possible with who I am outside of the workplace. And so that congruence, that mirroring is a really critical component to my overall professional well-being, because in the work that I do, and supporting students and leading teams that support students, we're working with students who are 18 to 62 years old, confronting some of the most challenging things that they've experienced in their own lives. And some of that is really tough work. And so we can't help but bring our full selves, our full souls to our jobs. And so for me to feel well, I have to have that balance. I have to have that stimulus. And I have to have that sense of grounding and purpose.
Okay. And Chris, can you share one thing your organization that you've worked with in the past has done to help support well-being in the workplace, big or small, that you recall?
I don't know if this is by design, but as I said, I've been working in post-secondary institutions for about 30 years, and predominantly in large urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver. And when you're in a post-secondary school setting in those big cities, there's a bit of a hustle in the environment. There's a hustle in the air that you just can't ignore. It's just part of the ecosystem. And when I moved to Niagara 2 years ago, it was an intentional move, not only to take up the opportunity in the role that I have. I'm currently the vice president of students at Niagara College, but also to experience a change of pace in the environment and the ecosystem that surrounds me. And a big part of what I've come to realize is there's the people in this region, the community in this region, they are here because they want to live here, probably more so than they're here because they want to work here. And if I think about my experiences in Toronto and people who I've worked with over the course of my career in Toronto, people live in Toronto because that's where they work, but they'd rather be living somewhere else a lot of the time. And so there's a prioritization in sort of the geography of this region that is around quality of life. And the way that that plays out is that despite being in a very demanding job and despite having a lot of balls in the air and things that I'm managing, there's not a lot of work that's expected in after work hours. So it's not like we have a hard and fast, no emails after 5 p.m. rule, et cetera. But not a lot happens once people go home. We work hard when we're at work, and then we all have lives to live outside of our work environment. So I know that that's not by design. I think it might just be by circumstance. But I think the culture of the region, in terms of how people expect to live their lives, has really engendered that sense of respect for people's lives outside of a 9-to-5 office experience.
Yeah. Your answer resonates with me so much because I worked in Toronto for many years, led a sales team in Toronto in the construction industry. And, you know, the hustle that you're talking about or the energy that you're talking about at schools on a construction site, it's a different kind of animal. And then, you know, and some of the guys, you know, that I was working with or, you know, whatever, like they were my cousins. And they were still like yelling at me, and time is everything, right? And then when I switched out to Niagara, holy, it was just like a different little space out there, you know, where things kind of slow down. And you know, I made a joke of saying that, you know, the I'll say it on here, the asshole exit, I think, was Stony Creek. Anything past Stony Creek, you know, it was like really good people. And I'm obviously joking a lot there, but not really overly too, but yeah, it's just a different kind of people out there. And it's, you know, we're talking a 30-minute drive, 45-minute drive.
Yeah, I've described, I don't know if you watch TV, but there's a television show called Severance on Apple TV. And the premise of the show, of course, is that people go to work, and as they go in the elevator at their office and they descend to their office space, their brain is severed from their outside world. And so then when they leave the office, their brain again is severed and they don't remember their work world. And it's sort of exists this coexistence of two very separate and distinct identities. I've often described to people that as I drive over the Burlington Skyway from Toronto, it's like that Skyway Bridge has a severance between the hustle and that buzz of Toronto. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow, the water's blue. I can see the escarpment. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to trip over about 128 wineries between here and my house. There's just something about it that is very, very unique and very, very special.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think is one challenge that today's leaders are faced with when it comes to supporting their teams and well-being?
I think a lot about this because it relates to a challenge that I've experienced. And I think that in leadership, there's still a very socially constructed expectation about how it is that we move through the world as leaders, that we have broad shoulders that can hold a lot of weight and responsibility, that sometimes we need to protect our teams and the people who we lead from some of the bad stuff or the really challenging parts of the work that we do. And I know that that's how I was socialized into my leadership identity and my leadership experience. And I think the challenge that we face as leaders is actually being truly authentic and transparent about our own well-being and how that honesty and transparency actually can work in their favor. And so I worked at another college before I came to Niagara, and with others on the senior team, led that college through the pandemic lockdown. And we were working remotely for over 900 days in downtown Toronto just because of the lockdown and other competing circumstances. And you carry a lot of responsibility on your shoulders when you are connecting with a team of employees that for me was in excess or just over 200 people. My only contact with them was through a video screen. And outwardly, the right thing to say was, we're all in this together. It's going to be okay. And then when I turned off my camera, I'd be screaming inside going, oh my God, we're all going to die. And having my own experiences of panic and anxiety. I found that once I started to shift and own my own experience and own my own feelings, thinking, thoughts, and emotions around that, it created a higher degree of safety and trust for my team members to do the same. And I remember very, very clearly a moment after sort of those 900 days of lockdown when I had really reached my limit. During the pandemic, I worked at a post-secondary organization. I wrote and defended my doctoral dissertation. I purchased my first home. My brother unexpectedly passed away, and I had to eulogize him through Zoom, which was a very surreal experience. Had 2 cases of Bell's palsy and a mild case of shingles, all because of the stress of what was happening in that space. And as the world started to reopen, I found myself less interested and less able to actually engage with that world because of my own panic, my own anxiety, and my own fear. And I remember the very critical, pivotal moment when I sat with my team on a call and said to them all, I can't do this. I'm not well. I need to take some time off. And I can't, there wasn't a single person on that call of 10 of my colleagues who I had the privilege to lead at the organization, who didn't say that they were really proud of me for doing that, because they could see it. I was tried to be as transparent as I could with it. And it took a lot to get to that point, because I felt like I was letting them down. I felt like I was failing them. I felt like we're about to go back into this new normal, which we had sort of created a rhetoric around, and that they needed me. But the biggest lesson that I learned as a leader was I needed to figure out how to need and protect myself before I can be that to other people. And so I think in leadership, we really have to square that circle, and understand that we bring our whole soul, we bring our whole selves to our work each and every day. And that congruence, as I referred to earlier, that's a very, very powerful leadership skill to flex when you're working with people.
Yeah, and you know what? On that, Chris, the leadership skill. I know we're the same age, and
Mhm.
I think if we go back in our resumes, in our work history, growing up, the people that would get promoted would be typically like the people who performed well in their role, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're a good manager because you can teach how." In my world, it was always sales, but you could teach the other members how to sell more.
Yeah.
But there was that was it.
Yeah.
Right? Now when we're promoting people, and I think a lot of companies are still in that kind of same position where they're promoting performance.
Mm-hmm.
How is that person emotionally intelligent to lead a team?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we want that, we have to train. We have to train for that.
Yeah.
And how many of these organizations are truly training that side of leading people?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that you mentioned too, Chris, was about talking about all the stress that you were going through, and we had a conversation before we started recording, and sharing notes and exchanging great experiences.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and I'll do this here. Let's see if but this book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes, I have that one.
I think we go through it, right? And it just speaks to how all of the emotions we go through basically still reside in our bodies.
Absolutely.
And how every emotion can be tied to different organs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think if we start understanding stress and how it impacts us, and all right, like, how do we de-escalate?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're very good at escalating.
Yes.
But to de-escalate where we're at, I think that is a key learning that all leaders should learn from.
And I think what we have come to expect or perceive is that persisting or being resilient and pushing through the escalation, that's de-escalation. That's not. That's just compounding it and sort of trying to protect yourself to the greatest extent possible. And I think there's a distinction between that protection and actually what you've described as de-escalation is a process of taking that armor off, that you're trying to protect yourself from that escalated state. It's removing that armor to then really get a sense of what's happening underneath, and seeing that and experiencing it and understanding it and then working with it. And you were expected to hold it together in some really crappy situations. And I have found over the course of my career as well that I've worked for some wonderful leaders who said, Chris, the only person who's expecting out of yourself is you. And so it's also in doing the narratives that we have in our heads that, you know, I would love to figure out who to blame for it, but I can't because I'm a social creature and I'm a byproduct of the environment that I was brought up in. And so it's an ongoing project. Like, I don't think this is something that I as a leader will ever have the magic sauce to. I know I'm going to get it right when I retire because I'm going to be good at retirement. I'm going to be really good at retirement. But that's a while away. So yeah.
Yeah, you know, I love that because I tell everybody I am the world's greatest salesman.
Yeah.
By far, because I can convince myself at any time to eat that extra cookie or have that, you know, little bag of chips or, you know, go for a nap, whatever it is, I can convince myself to do it, right? Next question, and it really pertains to, you know, we've talked about everybody else, a little bit about yourselves, but how do you recharge your batteries?
I'm a napper. So one of the challenging parts of being in lockdown was the isolation. As I said, I think at the top of our time together, I'm single, and I also had a dog through lockdown who's since passed. But I really learned the value of sleep and getting really good sleep hygiene and getting that under control. And so for me, it started as I was just burnt out and I needed to crash. And there were moments in that experience, in that period of time, where I might be on a Zoom call with my camera off and my microphone off, but I'd be hiding under the blankets in bed to try to cope with it. As I said, to try to protect or shelter myself from all the stuff that was in the air around me. But I came out of that experience as well, really seeing the value of listening to my body. When my body says I'm tired, I really respect that message. And so it's not unusual if I'm physically at work, I won't nap, but I will, before I close my door into the office, I'll tell my colleague who I work with, I'm going for a nap, quote unquote, for 15 minutes, but I just lay down on the floor and meditate with the lights out and close my eyes. So I'm giving my body rest. Mm-hmm. While I'm actively in the office, it's more meditation. If I'm working from home and have, you know, an hour and a half in the middle of my day or my lunch break, I'm not shy about crawling into my bed, which is right next door to this room I'm in right now, and actually taking a half hour and resting. Mm-hmm. And also talking, like, am I sleeping on the job? Well, I'm sleeping on my break, and I'm okay with that. The other thing that I have done is, and some of it's also about helping others. As I said earlier, there's a real respect for life outside of the 9 to 5. But when people they do message me or they do call me, I said, that's great, but we're not hearing an answer. This can wait till tomorrow. Yeah. To establish my boundary and also give them permission to do the same. And so for me, it's just a lot of small things that add up. Mm-hmm. To, I think, have a really significant impact. The final thing that I did, and a lot of my experience with my mental health, as I understand it in a more complex way today, really had its genesis during lockdown, is I consciously turn off noise. So during lockdown, at that point in time, of course, the media was case counts and what Donald Trump was doing. So I had to stop watching the news. I had to stop listening. I do the same now. I have really solid boundaries with my digital tools of my phone. I've become a voracious reader. Last January, so a year ago, I decided to give up almost all of my social media. And my commitment to myself was that for every week I was off social media, I'd read a book. So by the time I hit December 31st of this past year of 2025, I think I clocked in just north of 60 books in 1 year. And so that removal of my attention from the day-to-day and into a space that is completely escapist. I don't read leadership stuff. I don't read work stuff. I read fiction. I read stuff that's fluffy. I read stuff that I don't have to actually kind of think about. Yeah. And the big thing in terms of how that connects to my leadership is, like, I talk a lot about this. Like, I talk about the great nap I had in the middle of the day, or I talk about the best book that I read recently, and want to try to have those same conversations with with my team members, with my colleagues.
Yeah, awesome. What advice, I know we've talked a lot about it, but what advice would you specifically give to leaders who are trying to create that kind of environment or that culture within their organizations when it comes to well-being?
I
We
think
could write a book, but just one.
really good, yeah.
Yeah.
I think given the experiences we've had and the commonalities, I think we as leaders need to really come to the idea of creating a thriving culture in our workplaces and our schools. We have to come at that with integrity and authenticity. We have to do the work. And that for me was an awakening as well. As I said, I've worked in this sector for 30 years, always in sort of student support areas. And if I was working with a student who's going through some challenging times, I would not think twice about talking to them about how are you looking after your well-being? How are you taking care of your head? How are you taking care of your heart? Have you looked at counseling? Have you looked at and exploring all these options with them? And then I'd go home at the end of the day feeling the exact same way about myself, and I wouldn't listen to any of my own advice. And I had this realization of what a fraud am I to not even like listen to my own best advice that I pride myself on being able to give as a professional. And so I think coming to this leadership space with that authenticity and acknowledging not only have I done the work, but I'm still doing it. That I think creates a trust that you can't replicate in trying to build culture.
Yeah. It's great that you said that, because even like this morning for myself, where I was reacting in a response to an email or something, and here I am getting ready to fire back, and then I was like, whoa, like literally at the last men's support group that we did, the thing that we talked about for 2 hours was clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And how much that can impact decisions we make and so forth. So after things worked out for me this morning, I stepped back and I'm like, man, I didn't even apply those clarity things that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But now in reflection, I'm aware that I didn't do it. So now in reflection, I'm like, all right, here are the, and I go back to those steps that I should have taken.
Yeah.
And it is, we're chipping away at very cured concrete.
Absolutely.
So it's going to take time, but the most important thing is effort, as you mentioned.
Yeah, for sure.
So Chris, when that day comes that you do get to celebrate the retirement, how would you like people that worked with you and for you to remember you?
I've recently had a new leader join my team at the college, and we've had a quick conversation about sort of how things are going. And a piece of feedback that they offered me is they said, you're really consistent. And consistent isn't a really glamorous word. Like, it's not visionary, it's not transformational, but it was consistency in terms of you say what you mean and you do what you say. And I've used the phrase congruence, or the word congruence before. And so there's real match between actions and words. And for me, that comes from a place of being really anchored in my own values. And so that consistency with who I am as a person, how I show up in my work, how I show up as a leader, how I show up as a son and a sibling, that for me, I think, is something that I will be remembered for and hope to be remembered for. I at times in the very squeaky wheel, and I am at times probably the person who may have to give the dissenting opinion or name the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. But if I didn't, I probably would feel inconsistent with who I am. And so, if nothing else, I think there's a really strong sense of alignment for me. And that's really what I strive for. As I said at the top of our time together, to get out of bed and have that sense of purpose and alignment with my values. That's how I want to be known when I am retired.
That's a great answer. I think in all the interviews I've done, that's the first time. So, yeah, that's great. I remember a hockey coach who was selected to coach, like, let's say it was Team Canada or an all-star game or something, and says, hey, why did you put that player out there instead of selecting this player? And he said, well, the other player has much more skill level. He goes, I know what I'm getting with the consistent guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, yes, it's an invaluable tool. It's an invaluable advantage.
It's reliability, it's dependence, and I think I come at that reliability and that consistency because I've done all the work. Like if I had described what reliability means 15 years ago, I'd probably be reacting and thinking about it very differently. I'd be thinking about it as I have to be reliable because that's how I measure up, and that's how I ensure that other people value me or that they like me. Whereas now it comes down to I'm a fan of James Clear's work around identity-based habits. And so for me, it's about the identity and that consistency with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to reach up and grab that other Atomic Habits book that is just up there. But, last question before we go, and that is, what gives you hope about the future of well-being at work and at school?
I know that we are having difficult conversations in our workplaces, and that there's a recognition that workplace well-being there's not a silver bullet to it. It's a process, and it's for organizations. I think it's a lifelong project, and that it's not always going to be smooth, because how organizations are made up of hundreds of people, thousands of people sometimes, and they all bring their own stuff to that space. And so we have to look at well-being as its own sort of dynamic ecosystem about how people relate to their environment, how they respond to it, and how they actually, I think, thrive in it. So at least the organization that I'm with, the fact that we're talking about it as a living thing, the fact that we're talking about even some of our own strategic plans and objectives that really are deeply connected to well-being and belonging. We're not talking about those things as static state. We're talking about them as evolving practice, as capacity building, as culture building, and knowing that it's a constantly moving object, and how do we actually then continue to support that movement, which is what I think makes workplace well-being actually really kind of magical and cool.
Chris, thank you so much for talking, even more so for sharing your life experiences. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me in this conversation. And yeah, it was great. Always too quick in these conversations, but
it was a great conversation, and a wonderful pause in my Wednesday, which always feels like a bit of a drudge of a day. Yeah. And for me, it's also a great conversation because I'm going on vacation tomorrow. And so you've helped me just get into a perfect mindset for a string of days off. So thank you.
Nice. Well, enjoy the next nap, and all the best to you and your family, sir.
Thank you so much.